Usually when a trap in a video game is used, it is used in one of two ways. Either it's made as obvious as possible so you can easily dodge it, or it's made a little bit more complex so you can feel really smart when you finally work it out. And then there's Dark Souls, where players will use hints as traps to make people fall off ledges, which is just... thanks. And yet, across the myriad of games at our disposal, there have been countless times where we've said to ourselves, you know what, this definitely looks and feels like a trap, before then shrugging and triggering it anyway. And the reasons why we put our avatars through this can also be numerous. Maybe we wanted to call the game's bluff, maybe we thought that there'd be some sort of secret for doing so, or maybe it was just too damn funny not to. So with this in mind, let's unwrap that suspicious package that has a label that says definitely not a bomb and have some fun, shall we? As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 obvious video game traps we definitely fell for. Number 10. Wheatley's Trap Portal 2. While there are many nefarious traps you have to deal with in the Portal series, it seems that poor old Wheatley didn't exactly get the upgrade that allowed for their creation because, to be blunt, his traps are rather crap. Wheatley was created to counter GLaDOS by dampening her intelligence when attached to her, and this becomes even more apparent when you see the first proper trap that he tries to off you with. Under the guise that more spikes equal a better trap, Wheatley surrounds you with a series of crushing walls. It almost looks intimidating if it weren't for that one spot that you can clearly make a portal to, taking you totally out of harm's way, and when your plan can be defeated by a woman cryogenically frozen and then hastily brought back and a talking robot potato, you probably might not have got the absolute best threat to the existence of the player right here. Hilariously though, because you can get an achievement for jumping into Wheatley's death trap after you've escaped it, you'll still likely die at least once to it in order to get that sweet, sweet trophy, in essence making you willingly want to give yourself up to his otherwise terrible trap. Number 9. The Curtain Call Trap. Fallout 4. In a weird turn of events, in order to recruit Strong, a super mutant with a penchant for Shakespeare, you are basically forced to fall for a truly obvious trap. This is because when you get a distress call from Rex Goodman, you rock up to a building that he's in and see a whole host of super mutants just waiting in ambush for you. And this will already put you on edge, but this is not the trap. Because once you've spilled a lot of irradiated blood and got to Rex and Strong, you'll find that there's a lucky, handy, dandy, super duper escape elevator that just so happens to be right next to where you need to go. However, as you might expect, said open side elevator is less of a convenient route out of the building and more a total trap, which in retrospect was super obvious. The minute the lift begins to lower, the super mutants begin to fire on you, likely while laughing amongst themselves about how gullible you are. And if you don't have a gun to fire back, you're in for a pretty bad time. All I'll say is just duck and cover and pray for the best. Or hide behind Strong, that'll probably work. Number 8. Anything with patches. Dark Souls. Trusty Patches is basically the Pied Piper of being a prick. Each and every time that you meet him across the Dark Souls games, he'll offer a promise of riches beyond your wildest dreams and then hoof you in the back down a pit before laughing at you for your greed. And he does this every single time. And you know what? We still somehow fall for it. Maybe it's because he's right that maybe we are just a bunch of adventurers with eyes bigger than our bellies, but it could also be that in Dark Souls, things aren't always what they seem. You see, for every shove and push, Patches opens up new areas and secrets for the player to explore, and without these, let's just say, little nudges, you'd miss out on some truly great items and even an emotional storyline or two as well. So even though the man messes with you whenever he gets the opportunity, in essence, he's actually helping you out. Trusty Patches indeed. Number 7. The Nugget Cave. Kindergarten. By the time that you reach the playtime section of the Groundhog Day style shenanigans of Kindergarten, you've likely died at least 7 times minimum. Despite its deceptively wholesome appearance, this is a dark and gory game that will have you dying endlessly in order to finish all of its nefarious puzzles. And amongst your various demises will be some undeniably stupid ones that are largely down to things that you can't actually predict, like bloodthirsty janitors, but they still leave you feeling pretty dumb for falling for them. In particular, your likely death trying to get into your friend Nugget's secret lair will probably feel the most painfully obvious, as he'll give you the option to jump into the large hole that he's created in the sandbox where his hidden base is. However, because he doesn't trust you, the kid hasn't put down any necessary measures to protect you from the fall, which is obviously naturally throwing a ton of chicken nuggets down there. This means that when you jump from the great height, you'll fall to the stones at the bottom, getting you a massively unsurprising game over. Number 6. The Tears Temple, God of War 2018. The most annoying thing about getting hurt or killed by any of the traps in Tyr's temple is that they could not be any more obviously traps. I mean, come on, the large spiked walls and razor blade discs might as well have had "this is definitely a trap" scribbled all over them in thick red Sharpie, and yet I bet you anything that we all ended up getting mulched by one or two of them in our time in this game. And that's because it's all about timing and the use of the Leviathan Axe's ability to freeze objects in place. While it's always in theory a simple matter, you can quickly find that you estimated the time you had wrong, which usually leads to a painful demise. And to be honest, I think that we all experienced at least one death at the hands of the final puzzle in this area just because of the added stress of Kratos drowning. But to be fair, the tension created by this scene was utterly glorious. Number 5. The Gill Cave, Final Fantasy V. When you first find the secret path to the south of the Gill Cave, nothing seems too off about the fact that the game is giving you 10 Gill. I mean, after all, it's not exactly a wealth of riches, and you did just discover a clearly hidden area. And when you walk a couple more steps and get 20 Gill, and then 40, you start thinking to yourself, hot damn, I'm going to be rich as hell if this keeps up. And unfortunately, the trail does lead to some green, but it's in the form of the Gill Turtle, not just a nickname that I got when I shaved my beard off. A sweetly named but brutal enemy if ever there was one. The undead Terrapin is a deadly opponent, as not only does he hit with some serious physical damage, but whenever you harm him, he'll counter with another huge hit. It can also use Earthquake, which is an absolute nightmare unless you've neutered it with Float. In fact, the battle is so hard that there are countless guides on party layouts online, all of which speak volumes about how so many people fell for such an obvious trap. Number 4. Lefty, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. If there's one weirdly specific rule that you should always follow in horror games, is that if you find discarded animatronics waiting for you in a dark alleyway, you should under no circumstances try to keep them. And yet, due to what can only be described as a universal death wish, many of us brought these battered murder machines into our pizzerias despite the fact that the game in no way makes you do so. That's right, you raise your potential death at work rate from 0 to 100 by your choices alone. And under no circumstances should you ever choose Lefty. Your first and most obvious warning when it comes to this particular animatronic is that, unlike many of the other scrapped robots, he is almost completely intact. The reason someone would abandon a completely unbroken machine quickly becomes clear, however, because while Lefty isn't a consistent pain, should there be too much noise or heat in one specific night, he'll come after you and cannot be stopped by literally any means whatsoever. Maybe that 9 ranking on liability should have been a clue, right? Number 3. The Poison Powder, Papers, Please. Papers, Please is a game that, on the surface, is about being a passport inspector. However, it's also a game about assassination, political espionage, and societal corruption. But the latter of these elements is entirely up to the player, and you can choose to just follow the life of a humble and terribly paid border guard. But with these deeper choices comes the possibility of death from numerous ways, and of these, the most hilarious can be found when you try and aid the members of the mysterious cult-like Ezek Order. Help them out, and on day 20, you're given the opportunity to poison an assassin who is coming to kill Ezek agents. Said poison is provided to you in a little pouch, which, when opened, helpfully reads, "Do not touch powder." And so what do you think we all did upon reading this? We touched the powder and died. Brilliant. Number 2. Do not do this. Sunless Sea. Sunless Sea is not a game that holds your hand under any circumstances. If you want to run out of fuel for your ship and go mad, it'll let you do just that. Run out of food, it'll even give you the choice of eating your crew, and that is about as nice as it will ever get with you. So what do you think we should do when we see an option marked "Do not do this"? Well, if it was up to me, we shouldn't probably do what it's telling us don't not do, and don't do the thing in question, right? Well, loads of players ignored this, and as such, it's led to tons of moments where the current captain gets off and things start anew. However, I can't deny I wasn't tempted, because after all, why offer us the choice if it's always going to be bad? And number 1, the torture devices. Amnesia, Dark Descent. There is no feasible reason so many of us tried to use the torture devices placed around Amnesia, the Dark Descent, aside from either lunacy or grim curiosity. It doesn't exactly take a genius to realize that these devices created to maim people will also, well, likely maim you, and pretty intensely, I might add. And yet, it's almost inevitable that your desire to know what might happen should you go inside one of the many torture devices will grow to the point where you are curious no more. And despite being the clearest traps available, we willingly threw ourselves inside them. them. Now, this is almost forgivable with things like the brass bull device, where you might not recognize it as a torture device straight away, but when it comes to things like the Iron Maiden, well, you know exactly what you're in for, and thus when you die inside its cruel, cruel spikes, there's nobody you could blame but yourself. Then again, this is the same game where you can shove your hand in acid if you feel inclined to do so. Maybe all of this isn't actually that surprising. And there we go, those were 10 obvious video game traps you definitely fell for. I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. If you want to chat to me further, and this is not a trap, I swear, you can do so by going over to Twitter and typing in @RetroJ with a 0 and following this handsome, bold lad right here. You can also follow my board game channel. It's called Live and Let's Dice, and at the moment we're playing a lot of Warhammer and also Dungeons and Dragons, which has got tons of choices in and tons of traps. I'm also going to be streaming Death Trap Dungeon pretty soon, so look out for that. But before I go, I just want to say one quick thing. We spoke today about situations that we knew were bad for us, but we willingly put ourselves in that situation. And you know what? Sometimes we do this unintentionally or intentionally in our real lives as well. And unfortunately, it can mean that we make bad decisions that have negative impacts for ourselves and the people around us. And I just want to make sure that you are treating yourself fairly, both mentally and physically. And I hope that you are not punishing yourself for mistakes of the past or choices that you're about to make. What helps me through difficult situations is taking a step back every once in a while and just reminding myself of who is involved in the decisions that I make. So for example, if I'm doing something that I know will have a negative impact on me, but it's helping someone else, maybe I can balance that out. But if I can't, if I know that it's going to be bad for somebody else or it's going to hurt me in the long run, then recognizing that and taking a step away or asking for help to overcome that problem is definitely the route that I'd recommend. I wish nothing but love, happiness, and success for you, and I really hope you don't fall for any traps that you've made for yourself in the past or in your future. Now go out there and smash at your big ledge. As always, I've been Jules. You have indeed been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.